listening to iFan Sports Talk Radio. And now, live from Studio 215 in Low Country, South Carolina. Welcome to the Live in 5 Show with your host, Nikki Fu.
Welcome everybody, this is your host Nikki Fu, Live in 5 Show, episode 29, where we talk about days 1 and 2 of NHL free agency, and not a really eventful free agency frenzy like we've seen in years past, but some notable names moving on, and of course the big signing of John Tavares. Before we get into the NHL free agency, I would like to sort of share my thoughts of what's going on in the NBA, and with LeBron James signing with the Lakers like everybody expected. And I get it with LeBron James, he gave Cleveland the title. I think the fans in Cleveland really appreciated him this time, and he knows he probably wants to end his career out west. He's going to be doing a lot of production in movies going down the road, and I think LA makes sense for him. And he's getting to the latter part of his career. His play is still great, but I don't think it's he's over his peak, and I don't think the Lakers are going to get the LeBron we saw back in his Miami Heat latter days and his early days with the second go around with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And plus, he is going to the Western Conference, which I believe is just, the conference. And there's so many strong teams with the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors. And the signings that the Lakers have done in these past couple days after signing LeBron with JaVale McGee and Stevenson didn't really make sense. And especially now with the Golden State Warriors getting Boogie Cousins on a 1-year deal, $5 million to replace McGee. The Warriors are stacked again, and I just don't see LeBron getting Lonzo Ball getting past the Golden State Warriors. So, did LeBron make a mistake going to the Lakers? Well, no, he wanted to play with them. He wanted to finish his career out west, but it's going to be really tough for LeBron to see the finals. And I really don't think the team is that equipped to even maybe get past a team like the Houston Rockets also. So, of course, the Golden State Warriors loaded again going into the 2018-2019 season. Clearly the favorite to win their 4th title in 5 years, going for that three-peat. The NBA, these super teams, they just have to stop, man. It's just getting ridiculous. People like the super teams. I personally don't. I think you need a little bit of parity in the NBA. You're starting to see that come around now in the NHL. With the hard salary cap the NHL has, they don't have the luxury tax like the NBA does. So we'll wait and see. So let's get to it. Day 2 just finished up NHL free agency. Notable signings in day 2 that these players weren't signed in day 1. James, the real deal Neal, signs a 5-year, $28.75 million contract with Calgary. He only gets a $750,000 a year raise. He was making $5 million a year under his old contract. Moving out to the Alberta area, Western Canada. I think it's a great fit for him. There's an up-and-coming team with Calgary, produces a lot of offense. It's a north-south team, and that's James Neal's scheme. He proved that when he played with the Predators and the Penguins. I don't really believe the Vegas was that kind of team, though he did have good success with the Knights, but I don't think he had the success like he did with the Predators and the Penguins. So good fit for James Neal. Also in day 2, you had Joe Thornton. Really was no really much interest out there in day 1. Getting up there in age, he signs a 1-year, $5 million contract to stay with the Sharks, and that is there is a no trade clause in that contract too. So I could probably see this as Joe Thornton's last year. Probably going to retire. Probably going to head to the TV booth. He is a very has a lot of knowledge of the game, and I could see him on the NHL Network or NBC Sports. So moving back to day 1, a lot of signings and big names going off the board. Of course, we will talk about the first and the biggest signing, the John Tavares sweepstakes. As everybody thought, he was leaning toward Toronto, the team he grew up with, the team he rooted for. He signs that deal with the Maple Leafs for 7 years, $77 million. Austin Matthews is pumped up that Tavares is coming to the Leafs. Will he wear the C in Toronto? Wait and see. I give that signing grade as a B. The only reason I gave it a B because it's a wait and see. The East is loaded. You have Boston, Washington, Pittsburgh, Tampa, Philadelphia is an up-and-coming team too. And you might even see a surprise with the New York Rangers. They got a lot of young talent in those trades they did last year. So the East is going to be loaded. It's going to be really tough to come out of the East to represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Finals. But we'll wait and see on that one too. JVR, Jay Van Riemsdyk, homecoming to Philadelphia. And 5 years, $35 million. I thought the signing was a little too much on Philly's part, giving him $7 million a year with a guy on the tail end of his career. And Philly has a tendency to give out those big contracts for older players. They did it with LeCavier, and that didn't turn out too well. So we'll see what happens there. But Philly does need the offense to keep pace with the high-powered teams in the Eastern Conference. I give that signing a C grade on that. Paul Stanzi went to Winnipeg in the trade deadline last year, did really well for them in the playoffs, getting them to the Western Conference Finals. Well, he signs with the team that knocked him out of the Western Conference Finals in the Golden Knights. 3 years, $19.5 million. I think it's a great fit. I give that grade an A for the Vegas Golden Knights. 2 St. Louis signings. Also, you have Tyler Bozak, center, third line center, going from Toronto to St. Louis for 3 years, $15 million. And David Perron leaves the Golden Knights and goes back to the Blues, being reunited with his old team. 4 years, $16 million. So the Blues fork out $31 million over 7 years for 2 players. I give the Perron Perron signing an A minus. The Bozak, I give it a B plus. I think those are 2 solid signings, and I see that St. Louis, they're on the cusp, I think, of being one of the top teams in the West. I think this really makes them, it sets them up for the next step to where they could probably, compete to at least get to the Western Conference Finals, if not late into the second round next year. Thomas Vanek leaves the Columbus Blue Jackets and goes to the Detroit Red Wings for 1 year, $3 million. I give that grade a C. And Pittsburgh, 2 signings yesterday too. Jack Johnson signs with the Penguins for 5 years, $16.25 million. I give that grade a C. The jury's out on Jack Johnson. His numbers have been declining, but maybe all it needs is a change of scenery Look what happened to Riley Shahan when he went to the Penguins last year. Jack Johnson, he is an offensive defenseman. He likes to jump into the play, into the zone. Of course, he knows Sidney Crosby very well as they played together when they were in junior hockey. So maybe it's a right fit for him. And that was the big signing the Penguins have. And another signing of note the Penguins made was bringing Matt Cullen back to the Penguins from Minnesota for 1 year, $650,000. So Matt Cullen wants to play another year. So good to see him back in a Penguin uniform. I think he really fit well when they won those back-to-back cups. So welcome back, Dad, to Pittsburgh. And finally, Ian Cole. Rumor had it that the Penguins were looking at him to bring him back after they traded him at the trade deadline, but he goes ahead and signs with the Colorado Avalanche, leaving Columbus for 3 years, $12.7 million. And I give that grade on that signing an A for the Colorado Avalanche. And the Matt Cullen signing I gave a B, and the Jack Johnson I gave a C. So those were the 2 days of free agency. There are still some notable free agents out there. Rick Nash of Boston. The reason he probably hasn't really signed with anybody was because he is contemplating retirement. So we'll see what happens there. But we're going to play a little excerpt right now from Jim Rutherford and the Penguins. And you're going to hear from Jack Johnson about him joining the Penguins.
Well, my wife and I came in today to start looking at homes, and we were absolutely thrilled to be here. It just seemed like a perfect fit in every which way, and feel very blessed to have the opportunity to be here and to be a Pittsburgh Penguin. And wife and I said it checks all the boxes for us. A great place to bring the family. Great opportunity for hockey. I've been really wanting to be a part of a winning culture and a place where the expectations to win are as high as they can be, and a chance to win. And I don't think I could have asked for a better opportunity here. With Sidney, he actually talked to me a while back. We had kind of a short conversation about it. He said he'd like to give me a sales job on coming, and I saved him the time and said you don't have to do much of a sales job on me. He definitely is an important part of this. He's the one who, drives the boat around here, and I know him well enough to know that he's the kind of guy that wants 5 cups, and the minute he gets a 5th, he's going to want a 6th, and that's important to me to be a part of that, and to have someone like him leading the charge on that, and all those things factored into this being a wonderful opportunity.
That was your newest Pittsburgh Penguin, Jack Johnson. Jim Rutherford did say he wanted to shore up his blue liners this offseason after a poor showing from his defensemen in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. Pens getting knocked out by the Capitals in 6 games. There was clearly, gaps that the Penguins needed to fill. And the jury's out on that signing. We'll see how it goes. The Penguins are left with very little cap space, and they're still trying to re-sign Olasak too. And we'll see what goes there. But that's the end of this episode. I want to thank everybody for joining me. This is Nicky Fu, your host, iFan Sports Talk Radio. You can follow us on Twitter at iFanTalk. We also have our Facebook page by simply just typing in #iFanTalk and like our page. All our content is on there. You can also look for us on YouTube, iTunes, radio, and you can find our podcast on the iTunes store along with at iHeartRadio also. So I want to thank everybody again for joining me. This is your host, Nicky Fu, and I will see you folks down the road.